Gary Axwell put the last bit of oregano into the spaghetti sauce he made. He wanted everything to be perfect when Samantha showed up. He wiped his hands on the towel hanging from his belt, covered the sauce to let it simmer, and lowered the flame. It would require another 2 or 3 hours before it was done. That would give him more than enough time to get ready before Samantha arrived. He'd met Samantha in his classical literature class. Professor Stevens had been demonstrating how all classical literature was, in many ways, taken directly from classical mythology. Gary spent most of the class ogling Samantha. She had been wearing a very short skirt, and her legs looked so inviting. He'd missed most of the discussion. After class, he stayed up quite late trying to review the notes that Samantha had diligently taken, and he'd fallen asleep reading them. If it weren't for her, he would be failing the class. How ironic that his distraction became his salvation. He made do with a small apartment, being a student of few possessions. His favorite room was the kitchen, and more than once he'd gotten sauce on his papers. He had contemplating dropping out of college and attending culinary school, but Samantha had mentioned more than once that she didn't want to marry a chef, and that was more than enough to keep Gary in class with her. Gary tossed the towel onto the counter and decided he'd better get into the shower, so he wouldn't look too freshly showered when Sam showed up. He made his way down the short hall, taking his shirt off as he went. He finished undressing in the bathroom, tied a towel around his waist, and decided to give the sauce one last check before he hopped in. As he returned to the kitchen, there was a strange rustling noise from the hall closet. It sounded like the rat he knew skulked around his apartment. The last thing he needed was for the rat to make an appearance during his dinner with Sam. He fetched the broom from the kitchen pantry and stood, poised in front of the closet door. He snickered at himself, wrapped in a towel, standing with the broom in front of the closet. After reading so much about the gods of old in Samantha's notes, he wondered just how much he looked like a scrawny Greek god. He stopped laughing, took several deep breaths, and threw open the door. He held the broom high and prepared to smash it down on anything that moved, but for a moment nothing did. Then he saw his shoes weren't lined up as he normally kept them. Instead, they were stacked in a peculiar fashion. It looked like a miniature throne of some kind. As he lowered the broom, something moved, but it most definitely was not a rat or even a mouse. It was a tiny man carrying one of Gary's shoes. He watched in dumb silence as the being carried the shoe, nearly 3 times the size of the little man, and placed it onto the throne. The man had long gray hair and a matching beard. He wore a short toga that allowed his well-muscled chest and legs to be exposed. Gary felt a tinge of jealousy as he looked at his own flabby gut and then back at the minuscule bodybuilder. It was then that the little man noticed Gary standing there.
The
little being said in a voice much louder than Gary had expected. "What?" he replied smartly. There was a pause. Then it said,
"Mortal, what is it you desire? You stare at my visage. What do you desire of me?"
Gary realized his mouth was hanging open and wondered if he should close it and the closet door, or just answer. He decided the latter. "I want to know," he said, then paused, "who you are and what you're doing in my closet?" The tiny toga-wearing man puffed up his chest and stated proudly,
"I am Zeus. I rebuild my throne. What is thy name, mortal?"
Gary knew who Zeus was, but he was unsure if this was some strange dream or not. He did stay up quite late last night studying. Perhaps this was just his tired mind playing tricks with him. He decided not to converse with it any more and reached to shut the door.
"You dare close the door on me?"
Zeus said, his voice booming louder than before, but still not loud enough to strike the fear in Gary that it had intended to. "Look, you're not real. You're just a figment of my imagination. You can go away now."
"Stop! Please! You know not what you say!"
Zeus's voice grew quieter and sounded desperate. Gary opened the door a little more. "Why?" Zeus looked exhausted with his tiny hands on his tiny knees. Zeus didn't look much like any god. "Why are you so small?" asked Gary. Zeus stood straight and took a deep breath to puff up his chest again. Even though diminutive, Zeus still looked proud. A narrow bolt of lightning danced about his hair, and he grew slightly taller.
"My stature is dependent upon the belief of my devout followers. When I was worshipped by thousands,"
he stressed thousands as if it were a great number,
"I was a titan. I was 50 feet tall and controlled the known world. I was the god of gods. I was the father of all."
Yeah. I read about all that. Why are you 6 inches tall and hiding in my closet?"
"I am a mere 4 inches tall."
"Whatever. Why are you in my closet, and why are you so small?"
As I was saying before you blasphemed and interrupted me, my size is dependent on how much I am believed in. You have some faith that I exist. My size is dependent on your faith in me. If you could go get some more people and come and worship...
You're in my closet, Gary said, still disbelieving that a miniature Zeus was here. He wondered about his spaghetti and how much longer he had before Samantha showed up. Why, even if I kind of believe in you, are you in my closet? Didn't you used to live on Mount Olympus in Greece or something like that?
'Tis true. I once sat upon my mighty throne on Mount Olympus. Mankind was at my disposal. I could rain my wrath down upon them when I was angry, and visit them when I was pleased. I had children that were gods. I had children born of mortals. Sadly, people's faith in me dissipated, until I reached the state you find me now. I am humbled.
But why my closet?
You thought about me while you read. Your very thoughts drew me to you.
Gary noticed that he was sitting on the floor in front of the closet, broom across his lap. Do you visit everyone who reads about you? Seems out of character for a god to be living in people's closets. Zeus held his hands behind his back and paced the width of the closet.
Your reading last night was more than just reading. You believed. For a flash you had honest belief that I existed, and I wanted to foster that belief. So I appeared here.
I don't have time for this. My girlfriend will be here shortly. I have to get ready. Gary shifted to stand up, and Zeus held his hands up.
Wait! Please, wait! You mentioned a girl. A woman?
Yeah, I guess you could say she's a woman.
Could I rain down upon her as a shower of gold?
Asked Zeus eagerly, too eagerly for Gary. He suddenly wished Hera was here to stop this perverted little god. Zeus! A nasally, twangy voice yelled from the back of the closet. Reminded Gary of his mother in a sick sort of way. How many times have I told you? A woman, just as tall as Zeus, strode out from the shadows of Gary's closet. Gary lay on his stomach in front of the closet, looking at the events taking place. I had thought that when Hercules was born, you were done with mortal women. I take my eyes off you for a second. You're trying to find another woman to impregnate. How many times?
Stop! I have done nothing!
Zeus's voice would have been booming thunder if he weren't only a few inches tall. Gary smiled as he watched the two fighting. Who is this mortal you're talking to? She demanded.
My dearest Hera, this is Gary, our only believer.
Only? What happened to that girl in Kansas?
That girl grew up and even threw out the books she'd been reading. She no longer believes.
Gary, my dear, Hera said in a loving, nurturing tone. How sweet of you to believe. Oh, I never said I believe. Like I was telling your husband here. I was just reading. If you did not believe, I would not be here to talk to you. You are such a dear. If you think so, lady. Look, I really need to get ready. I've been wasting enough time talking here. I do need to take a shower and everything. Are you two okay if I just leave you alone? No fighting, no showers of gold or anything like that? Zeus and Hera exchanged concerned looks. Zeus said,
Please tell me, Gary, does that flicker of faith that we are real still shimmer in your heart?
Will I get to take a shower if it does?
That little glimmer of hope could bring back my children. All of the gods could return. We could, with your help, get the world to believe in gods again.
You know, we've got one god now. We don't have time for all the other gods that used to hang around. You left us. We didn't leave you. 'Tis not true, Hera cut in. Had mankind not stopped believing in their god, we would still be here. Are you saying that if I start to believe that, say, Aphrodite was real, she'll appear? On cue, water bubbled and frothed on the wooden floor in Gary's closet. A tiny woman, nude save her long hair wrapped about herself, appeared from the waters. Hey! There's water on my floor! What's up with that? Good mortal, Aphrodite said. Thank you.
My daughter!
Zeus declared and rushed over to hug this woman. This is getting a little out of hand, said Gary.
Can you bring back Athena too?
Zeus asked eagerly. Who's that? Another woman, Hera stated scornfully. I don't think I got that far into my reading. I did read about Hermes, Poseidon, and Ares before I nodded off, though. The three gods, at the mention of their names, all appeared. Damn, next Hades is going to be here. Great. How many of you guys are going to be living in my closet?
Well, we all fit so far,
Zeus said.
Can I kill someone?
Hades asked.
I require some water, mortal,
Poseidon demanded. Look, you all need to be quiet while I get ready. I'm quite sure you're going to interrupt my date if you're not. Now I'm going to get into the shower. You can all stay in here, but keep quiet. What are we doing here? Ares asked.
This mortal believes in us,
Zeus said proudly. Aphrodite shifted her hair slightly. Isn't this great? We'll all be reunited soon. Actually, no, Hera said. He hasn't finished reading about us.
Can we not educate him?
Ares asked. Be quiet. Damn, the next thing you know, I'll start getting all those North gods in here, too. Who are they? Odin, Thor, Loki, and Frigga. Yeah, Frigga this. There was a burst of thunder, and Thor stood behind Odin and Frigga, and Loki ran from the closet. Hey! Where are you going? Look, I don't have time to be chasing little gods around my apartment.
What is happening?
Odin asked.
This mortal believes in the gods of old,
Zeus informed Odin. I love your hair, Frigga complimented Aphrodite. Oh, thank you. Gary turned away from the closet and looked to see where Loki was. Things were getting out of hand. This all started out a little funny, but he was losing time and then he needed to get ready. He wanted to be showered and prepared before Samantha showed up, and he wasn't sure he was going to get that time, especially if the little gods from his closet didn't at least stay there. Loki, where did you go?
I shall help you find him,
Thor said, and flew past.
Monhelior, lead me to where Loki, god of mischief, is doing his evil deeds.
Hey, I don't need your help. Just get back in my closet. By my beard, you are a giant! I'm not a giant. I'm normal. You're tiny.
I shall have to smash your head in,
Thor declared. Gary reached up and grabbed Thor out of the air. If anybody is going to do any head smashing, it'll be me. Understand? Now get back. Gary didn't get to finish his statement due to the loud clatter from the kitchen, followed by a high-pitched laughter. He suddenly knew where Loki was, and it sounded like his spaghetti sauce had fallen to the floor. Loki! The kitchen was a mess. Spaghetti sauce everywhere. Ares, Odin, and Zeus were eating it from the floor.
I swear,
this is better than the finest ambrosia, Zeus said. Hera, come here. Try this. Hey, get out of my kitchen. I've got to get this cleaned up before Sam gets here.
Should you supply me with water, I can wash all this away,
Poseidon stated dryly. Gary gripped his hair with both hands. Why did he try and read so late last night? Things were not supposed to be going like this. Samantha wasn't able to come over that often, and he always tried to ensure things went perfectly. These little gods that suddenly appeared were not helping. He looked down. Aphrodite and Hera skated on the floor in the sauce, leaving little streaks where they slid by. The doorbell rang. How much time has passed? Gary thought to himself. Sam can't be here yet. How am I going to get this cleaned up? He asked aloud. Odin and Zeus were confirming, and both flew to stand on each of Gary's shoulders. The mix of Greek god and North god was confusing enough. To have miniature versions of them standing on his shoulder was way too much. Gary faltered and nearly fell.
We have a plan. Stall her at the door for just a moment, Zeus said. We can handle everything. Just don't let her come near the kitchen, added Odin.
The two gods flew in the kitchen. Gary wiped his face with his hands, and as he walked to the door, Aphrodite appeared on his shoulder where Zeus had been. With a wave of her hand, Gary was clean and fresh with a hint of fruit scent in his hair. His towel transformed into a long, flowing white toga with a brilliant red sash. Gary stopped and looked at himself. His hands reached up to his head, and he felt a crown of leaves there. Aphrodite gave him a peck on the cheek and disappeared. Gary stood before the door. Again the doorbell rang, and he snatched open the door. Samantha stood there looking into her purse. When she looked up and saw Gary's outfit, she dropped her books and laughed. What? Gary said, a little hurt. Why did you dress like that? Gary thought quickly. Well, we were studying about gods. I thought I'd dress the part. Gary, you're so silly, Samantha said, and she slapped him playfully on the chest, then bent and picked up her books. I've got a surprise for you in the kitchen, Gary said, as he took her books from her. Did you cook for me again? Well, I did, but something happened. This'll be different than I planned. Different? What do you mean? Well, I was making spaghetti. Oh, I love spaghetti! Well, the pot got knocked over. Oh, no! How'd that happen? You wouldn't believe me. When they got to the kitchen, there was a feast unlike anything Gary could have imagined. Fruits, cheeses, breads, meats, everything spread out on the counters and tables on plates of gold. Lit candles were interspersed around the trays of food. Gary was just as shocked as Samantha. Oh, Gary, no one has ever done anything like this for me before. This is so romantic. She flung her arms around Gary's neck. Gary turned around and saw the door to the hall closet closing. Zeus was looking around the edge of the door and gave Gary a little wink. Perhaps having gods in his closet wasn't going to be so bad after all.